Hi, it's Carolyn. I'm here to help you learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes. And in this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this brushed buttercream cake. And I'm starting with my tiers already baked, filled, iced, and they are in the refrigerator waiting to be decorated. I have tons of videos showing you how I do that process, and that will be linked below. And I will also let you know how much I charged. So let's get started.
All right, if you've seen any of my videos, you know I'm going to tell you that I have Tylo's powder mixed into my fondant. I only use marshmallow fondant, and this is mixed in there. It's going to help the fondant set hard and be so much easier to work with. I will link this below. And I'm sprinkling a little bit of cornstarch on this cookie sheet, and I'm making these little fondant balls. So I'm just breaking a piece off, rolling it in my hands, making sure that it is perfectly round, and setting aside on that cookie sheet with the cornstarch so it doesn't stick. And I'm doing that in a bunch of different colors and a bunch of different sizes. So I think I did like 10 of varying sizes in all of the colors, and you can see all of them here, and I'm going to set them aside for a couple days so they can dry. Now I got my bottom tier out of the refrigerator. I'm taking a wet paper towel, and I just want to clean the cake board before I start this. And I have some blue icing. I just want to thin it out a little bit. If it's a little thinner, it makes it easier to paint on here. So I just added a little bit of water, and I'm using this long flat paintbrush. I got that at Michael's. I can link that below. I'm marking an arrow to the front of the cake, and I'm going to start in the back. So I am just wiping some icing up the cake. And I don't want too much. I started dipping it in water, but then it thinned it out a little too much, and I didn't like that. So I'm just dipping it back in the icing, and I am starting at the very bottom and brushing it towards the top, trying to bring it to a point. So let me slow it down here. You can see I'm holding the brush flat, and then I kind of turn it to the right to bring it to a point because I don't want it to lay flat the entire time. So I'm starting with it flat, twisting it a little bit to the right, and I'm releasing pressure as I bring it to the top to bring it to a point. So I'm just working in small sections, and I'm trying to keep the bottom section colored in. Now this is the background color. It doesn't have to be too heavy, but I'm just trying to make sure that I do varying heights. I'm not doing them all the same height, and I'm leaving a little bit of space in between. So again, I'm starting with the brush flat at the bottom and then lifting it up as I go. Now I'm doing 3 different colors on here. I'm starting with the light blue, then I'm going to do green, then navy blue. So the light blue is the background color. I want to try to bring this color up to closer to the top edge of the cake so that way you can see the color in the background when I add the other colors. And you don't see me doing this, but if the brush gets too much icing on it, I'm running it under hot water to clean it and getting it dry and then starting again. You don't want too much icing on here, just enough to thin it out. And here is the background color. So you can see they're varying heights. They're all not exactly next to each other, but they all come to a point. So I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator. And while that icing is solidifying, I'm going to make the letters for the top. So I rolled that fondant out about 1/4 to 1/2 inch thick, and I'm doing my trace, cut, and smooth method to do this. I'm taking my Dresden tool and I'm tracing these letters on here, but I want them to be a little thicker than what they printed out. So do you see how I'm going just to the outer edges a little bit wider than the letters are? That way they're not going to be too skinny. So this font is called DK Lemon Yellow Sun, and it is in my favorite fonts PDF, which is linked in the description. And once that's all traced on here, since this is a thicker piece of fondant, I need to make a guideline cut first. So what I'm doing, I'm sticking the tip of my X-Acto knife into that fondant so I can make a guideline. It is just so much easier if you do these guideline cuts first. It's going to prevent you from distorting the top edge of the fondant when you cut the rest of it out. And then once I have the guidelines done, then I'm going to stick the tip all the way down to the cutting board and use that line that I made as a guide and cut these out. Do you see how I'm not distorting the top edge of that fondant because that line is there? It's a little extra step here, but it's necessary just to make sure that all of these pieces look nice and pretty when you cut them out. And then anytime you cut anything out of fondant, you know what I'm going to say, it's going to be jagged and rough edges. So you have to take your fingers and your tools and take your time and smooth the cuts and make them look nice and pretty. And once they are all smoothed out, then I'm just going to realign it on top of the picture so it could dry to the correct shape and continue the process. And I want to set this aside to dry, so I'm just leaving it out at room temperature. And now I'm going to get my cake out of the refrigerator. That icing has solidified, and now I can continue this process. So now I have some green icing, and I'm doing the same thing, but I'm layering this on top of that light blue icing, and I don't want to bring it up as high as the light blue. So you can see I'm kind of going in between where those voids were, and I'm still starting with the brush flat at the bottom and then lifting it up and twisting the brush so it can come to a point as I lift it up the cake. Like I said, you're layering this on top, so you want to make sure that you could still see that light blue behind it. And if you find the icing to be a little thick, then just dip your paintbrush in some water and run it over that icing again to thin it out. But this takes a little bit of time. You have to work in small sections and vary the height and try to get it in between all of that light blue. And look how pretty this is. You could see the green in front of the light blue, but can still see the light blue in the background. Putting that in the fridge for about an hour so it can solidify, and let's add this final color. So I'm doing a darker blue in the very front. And again, I'm starting with my paintbrush is flat against the cake, and then I'm kind of twisting it a little bit so I can bring it to a point as I release pressure and kind of flick it as it gets to the top. And I'm trying to stay a little lower than the green and lower than the light blue. That way you could still see the colors behind it. And then here that icing still looked a little thick, so I ran my brush under a little bit of water and ran it back over the icing to thin it out a little bit. So that's the name of the game. You just got to work in small sections, make sure that it's not too thick, and just vary the colors in front of each other. And here's the consistency of the icing that I'm using. You can see that it is thinned out. It's thinner than a creamy peanut butter consistency. This way it's easier to spread onto the cake. So it wasn't really holding peaks, really stiff peaks, but it was still kind of holding its shape. This makes it so much easier to paint on the cake. And you can see I'm really not covering up that green too much as I bring the blue up in the front. And here is the entire thing painted. I still have to cover up the very bottom, so I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator. And now I want to do this little icing splatter. So I have this brush here. I got to get a new one, but I will link it below. I want to dip it in that thinned icing. I'm taking my clean finger. I just washed my hands, and I'm pressing that icing onto those bristles, and I'm holding the brush close to the cake, and I'm just peeling those bristles back and allowing that buttercream icing to splash against the cake. Now you don't want too much icing on that brush, or else you're going to get more lines or splatter on here. I kind of wanted these just to be like small little dots, although sometimes there is a variation in these. They aren't uniform. Do you see how there's some thicker ones there and then some smaller ones? Some of them end up being like little lines, but that's okay. There's a nice little variation in this pattern here, and I'm also making sure that I get the top of the cake, holding the brush over the top and then peeling back those bristles to transfer that icing. And then I completely washed that brush under hot water. I dried it with some paper towels, and then I'm starting with the next color. So I got that navy blue icing. It's thinned out on there, and I did the same thing. I'm getting it on there with my finger, and I'm trying to push it into those bristles. And then I'm peeling the bristles back as I'm holding it close to the cake. And you can see how I'm getting some lines here, which isn't horrible. You just want to make sure, again, like I said, that you don't have too much icing on that brush, or else you're going to get more of a splatter look. And then, again, I washed that brush, dried it, and then I'm doing the same thing with the green. And see how cool that looks? I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator for a couple hours so it can solidify. Now I'm getting that out of the refrigerator. It was in there for about an hour or so, and I just need to paint this bottom section. There's a little too much white sticking out of the bottom, so I'm just dipping the tip of my brush in that dark blue icing and painting that bottom part so you can't see any of the white. And then I just wet my paintbrush, and I'm trying to clean off any excess icing that is sticking to the cake board. And that looks beautiful. I'm going to put that back in the refrigerator. Now I want to paint the balls gold, so I have some Rolcom Super Gold mixed with a little lemon extract in that little cup, and I'm just using my paintbrush and a gloved hand, and I'm painting these yellow balls so they are gold. So this needs 2 coats, so once I'm done the first coat, then I pick up the first one and start all over again and do a second coat. That lemon extract evaporates really quickly, so these will dry really fast. And those look good. I'm going to set those aside. Now I'm going to stack the cake and wash in my hands. And then I'm going to get my bottom tier out of the refrigerator and use my little ruler to measure how tall the straws should be. Take a marker and mark just off of the edge. And then I'm going to take some scissors and cut that marker off, and I'm going to throw that piece away. Sinking the straws in the bottom tier, making sure that it's level, and I'm going to get down some icing. And I have a video where I go into detail on how I stack my cakes, and that's going to be linked in the description. Then I'm going to get that top tier out of the refrigerator. That icing is cold and hard, so I can handle it without messing it up, and I'm going to dowel it through the cakes down into the cake drum and then patch that little hole with some icing. Now let's just take a wet paper towel and clean that board one more time. I'm obsessed with clean cake boards. And then I'm rolling out this yellow fondant really thin, using my ribbon cutter and cutting a really long thin ribbon. Then I'm going to straighten it with my rulers to make sure that it is nice and straight. And I'm going to use that Rolcom Super Gold mixed with that lemon extract and paint this. So again, I'm going to do 2 coats. Do 1 coat, let it dry, and then the other coat is really going to bring out the gold. Then I have some piping gel and a paintbrush. I'm just running that along the bottom edge of the top tier. Start in the very back, wrap this around. Be careful not to let that ribbon touch the top of the bottom tier because the gold is going to transfer. And then where it meets in the back, just take your X-Acto knife and cut it, and then you can press the seam together. And now I'm just going to run my finger over it one more time to make sure that it is stuck to the bottom of that tier. Now some of that gold did get on that white icing, so I just have a wet paintbrush and a dry paper towel, and I'm just wiping the wet paintbrush on top of that gold to remove it. And now I want to add the edible gold leaf. I got this on Amazon. I will link it below, and I'm using my paintbrush to pick some of it up and stick it onto the cake. So you just need a little bit and then stick it on the cake. And I'm not putting the entire thing down. I'm just trying to use the tip of my paintbrush to spread it around. This stuff can be kind of flimsy to work with, so you just want to make sure that you can get it in the correct position. And look how pretty that looks. I'm putting that back in the fridge overnight, and the next day I'm going to decorate it. So I take it out of the fridge. That icing is cold and hard, and I'm getting toothpicks underneath all of these letters. Now with the X, you see I can't do it straight. I have to do it on an angle. And the same thing with the S. I can't put it straight. You're going to be able to see the toothpick. So I have to see where it's going to touch the cake and then just stick it in there on an angle. And then I'm taking a ruler to see where the center of the lettering is, and it was the X. So I'm sticking that in the cake. I have to stick it a little bit to the left because it's on an angle, and it's going to angle down to the right. That way it's right in the middle. I'm getting some piping gel underneath each of the letters as I stick them down. And now I want to cut a bunch of toothpicks in half with my snips, and then to get these in the cake board so they don't fall off, I'm hammering it down into the cake drum, and then I'm sliding one of those balls down on it. So you want to build these on here so they don't fall off of the cake. So again, getting a little bit of piping gel underneath it and then sliding it down onto that toothpick. Now some of these did dry a little flat, but if you place them in the cake correctly, you're not going to be able to notice that they are flat. So some of them I'm just using a toothpick and sticking the toothpick into the cake to hold it on there, and other ones I'm putting down into the cake board, but always trying to get a little bit of piping gel down there just to help it stick. And I do have a video where I go into detail on how I make these fondant balls and put them on a cake, and I will link it below, but I'm just trying to put it together like a puzzle. I'm having smaller ones in certain sections and bigger ones in other areas, and trying not to make 2 of the same color touch. And then I hammered that toothpick into the board. It was a little too tall, so I took my snips to cut it before I slid that smaller ball down. And then I'm doing the same thing for the balls on the top tier. So I started on the bottom left of the cake drum for the bottom tier, and then I'm doing it to the right side of the top tier. And then I'm also going to put some on the top of the cake. I don't really need toothpicks underneath these small ones, so I just got some piping gel down underneath the small ones, and I do still use toothpicks under the larger ones. And here is the cake. How pretty is that?
So there you go. How adorable is this cake? And it was pretty easy once you get the techniques down. Now, like I said, the brushed buttercream, you have to put it in the refrigerator in between doing the different colors so the icing can solidify and it's not going to blend together. But it may not look exactly the way that I made mine, but that's the beauty of it, because every time that you make it, it's going to look a little bit different. Just make sure that you layer the colors so you can see each color behind one another. Now, I didn't include it in the video, but I did make another topper. And it was this, and I have videos showing you how I make these number toppers, and I will link it below. But I didn't like it. I made it, and I didn't like the way that it would have looked on the cake. That's why I decided to go with the word topper rather than the number. I'm gonna throw this away because I'm never gonna use it. It didn't even make it in the trash can. But I like the lettering topper rather than the number, but if you just want to do a number instead, you could do that as well. Now, with the fondant balls, you wouldn't believe how many people get on me for making fondant balls. I know a lot of people prefer to do hollow chocolate or just purchase them. They are a little heavier than those other options. However, if you build them up so they are resting on top of each other, they're not going to fall down the cake. And also, I do let my customer know that there are tons of toothpicks behind there helping to support them, so they're aware of that when they disassemble the cake. Now, the top tier of this cake is a 3-layer not torted 5-inch, and the bottom tier is a 2-layer torted 7-inch. And I have a video where I talk about when I tort and when I don't tort my cakes, and I will link that below. It feeds 30 to 35 people. And how much did I charge? This one was $380. So I think that's it. What new techniques did you learn in this video? I would love to know. Leave it in the comments below. And just a reminder, I have ebooks with all of the recipes I use. I have my signature scratch pound cake recipes, my favorite doctored cake mix recipes, all of my buttercream icing and filling recipes, along with my favorite numbers and my favorite fonts. So they will all be linked in the description. And I do have a Cake Academy membership program where I can help you elevate your cakes to the next level. All of that information is in the description. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you're enjoying my tutorials, I would be so grateful if you could buy me a coffee. My link is down below. And I would love it if you would keep in touch on socials, and you can check out my website. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next. And hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys. And remember, it's cake, have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.